Imported medicine is disappearing from the shelves of pharmacies in China. This is mostly because of laws interfering with the market. Drug companies have been losing money, which is hurting the industry. And most importantly, it's making it hard to get cheap, accessible medicine. Chinese companies have become famous for their consistency and sticking to a long-term game plan. They copy things and make them cheap. By copying products, they bring in money, which can be a sustainable business model. If they make enough money, they'll be able to spend on research and development later. Chinese companies that make medicine have been able to do that with generic drugs. This helps create a market for super cheap medicine. But that market's also saturated with companies that can sell super cheap medicine in China. And the Chinese products are usually worse than the foreign ones. So super cheap medicine is a competitive market. As the cost of labor has gone up, drug companies just started to give up on it. They just didn't think it was worth it anymore. That seems rational until you realize the market's estimated to be worth $82 billion by 2015. So why would they be running away from such a huge market? It's because they didn't want to be forced to sell at super cheap prices. I say that they were forced to sell at super cheap prices because they were legally obliged to do so. This wasn't a price war. This is the work of the Chinese government. There was a law that keeps Chinese medicine under a certain price. The government created a list of which medicines would be defined as cheap medicine. So what's happening now is the makers of cheap medicine are leaving the country, or they're just no longer making the cheap medicine for Chinese consumers. According to the policy, over 500 drugs will be officially classified as low-priced drugs. The government also emphasized that medical staff should recommend cheap drugs of relatively high quality. This would entail recommending generic drugs instead of brand name ones. Insiders pointed out that the new policy on cheaper drugs might be a heavy blow to foreign pharmaceutical industry and can give a boost to generic drug makers. In China, there are over 16,000 post-market drugs. About 187,000 got drug approval. Among all of them, generic drugs account for quite a large proportion of about 95%. Post-market brand name drugs in China are almost all from foreign pharmaceutical enterprises. China's medicine market has developed very fast. Analysts said that from 2012 to 2017, the compound annual growth rate of China's medicine market reached 16.7%. It's also a good time for China's generic drugs to develop. Data shows that from 2012 to 2016, over 630 patented medicines will expire. It indicates that there's a huge market for generic medicine. Analysts predict that by 2015, the generic drug market will likely reach 500 billion yuan, or about 80 billion US dollars. But it's still not easy for China's generic businesses to profit in this market. There are over 6,000 pharmaceutical businesses in China, which keeps it competitive. The average profit margin of generic drugs could reach 10%. As well, the average profit margin in the world is usually 60%. The high cost of research and development is the most obvious big expense. Generic drugs can only succeed if they work like brand name ones, and this takes time and money. So while China is trying to make drugs affordable and accessible, it's also taking away incentive to make them. Don't go away, because up next to Money Matters, we're talking about generic drugs. Stay tuned.